Eyes wide open. We are heading deep into the Appalachian Mountains, one of the most active and haunted regions in the United States. The paranormal in Appalachia is far more real than most people realize. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
As Grandpa used to say to us kids when we were being raised up, if you go out in the woods, be mindful of what you're doing, and make sure you always know where you're at. He said, sometimes there's things out in the mountains that you don't know about. He said that one time when he was young, he went out coon hunting with his dogs, and he always had Plots and black and tans and blue tick hounds. Well, he went coon hunting one night, and he said it was kindly a strange night, almost eerie, that it was real quiet out in the woods, which was unlike the woods because you would hear the nightlife. And he said he tried to get his dogs out to run the trail, but they wouldn't leave his side. They just were whimpering and just staying right close to him. Well, finally he got them to get out and run a trail, but he said they came right back and they were crying like something had hurt them, and they had their tails between their legs, and he couldn't get them to go out again. And that's when he heard it. He heard this sound that sounded something like a panther, but much deeper and so loud that it almost felt like it shook the mountain. And he said him and his dogs lit out of there. He said he didn't know what it was, but the old-timers used to have a tale about ridge runners. And ridge runners were these creatures, they would call them. They had long hair, and they walked on two legs. And he said that they just stayed away from them, that they had their own places in the woods, and where you'd normally find them is rocking on the ridge, and that's why they always called them ridge runners. But they said to always stay away from them. And if you don't bother them, they won't bother you.
In the mountains, people listen to their homes, not just the creaks and the wind, but the silence. If a house that's full of sound suddenly gets still, no birds, no insects, no floorboards talking back, old folks said don't move. Something unseen had just stepped inside, and even nature has gone quiet to let it pass.
The Appalachian Mountains are more than just endless woods and old trails. They're a place where people go missing, where voices call your name from the dark. Hikers see things that shouldn't exist. Cabins appear where none should be. If you hear something whispering from the trees, keep walking. Don't look back.
Want to hear a scary story? So when I was 3 years old, my parents bought a house in the middle of nowhere, East Tennessee. The house was built in 1908, and they bought it from two little old women who had grown up there and lived there their entire lives. Time for them to downsize, so we got the house for a great deal. It was a gorgeous 2-story white house surrounded by a creek with woods all in the backyard. It was literally the best place to grow up possible. We had 2 neighbors move in when I was about 5. They were Native American. The wife was from the Cherokee tribe, and her husband was from a tribe whose name I'm going to butcher, but it was the Huscarora tribe. I think that's how you say it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, so they moved in, and they came to introduce themselves one day. When they pulled up, I was so excited. New neighbors were something that you didn't get often down there, so it was exciting. But when they got there, only the man got out of the truck. The woman stayed in the vehicle, which we thought was a little odd, but is what it is, right? So the man gets out and talks to my parents and me for a little bit. Within minutes, the woman was saying, "Hey, we've got to go, and we've got to go right now." So they just left. We thought that was a little strange, but again, is what it is. The next day, though, we get a phone call from her, and she says, "I'm so sorry that we had to leave so suddenly." And my mom's like, "No big deal. It's fine. Of course. I hope everything's okay." And she goes, "Actually, I have a question. I know you guys may not believe in this kind of thing, but I get like feelings. I just have this sixth sense. And I was wondering if you knew if anyone had died from a head injury in that house." And Mom was like, "Well, I have no idea, but I do have the phone number of the women that we bought it from, so I'll call them and find out." So she gets off the phone with her, and she calls the 2 sisters, and she kind of explains the situation. And she's like, "So did anyone die from a head injury in this house?" and it's silence until one of the old women speaks and says, yeah, someone did. She says that they had a big family, lots of kids. So when they were all little, they were out in the front yard playing baseball one day, and their little brother got hit in the head with either the bat or the ball. I can't remember. But, back in those days, it was like, rub some dirt in it, champ, you're fine. So they didn't think anything more about it, and they all, went to bed that night as normal. But the next morning, their little brother didn't wake up. He had unfortunately died of a brain bleed from getting hit in the head. So we hear this, and it's our turn to be silent. And we were like, what the heck? So Mom calls the new neighbor back, and she tells her what the two women just told her. And she's like, okay, well, he's still there, along with some others.
So I have a bit of a ghosty update, but the other night I was out in the kitchen feeding my cat, and I have to stand guard over him because he is a very old cat, and our other two cats are young, and they will try to steal his food. And he has very specialized food that he needs to eat, so that's a little context for this. So I was standing there with him while he ate his food, keeping watch, and I can see from the kitchen into the living room, and my bedroom with my husband is like in the hallway and behind me. So he hadn't come out. I would have seen him. I would have heard him. Anyway, I saw someone in the dark living room, suddenly start moving and walk down into the hallway. And as they did that, my cat perked his head up and looked right where I had seen it. And I got this presence. And, it wasn't anything bad. It was a very strong presence though. So like something was definitely there, and, it just really gave me the heebie-jeebies. And, I was like to the point that I was having to like reassure myself, even if it is something bad, I know how to protect myself. But it wasn't anything bad, but it was a very, very strong presence. So that happened.
I've got a spooky story for you. And I wouldn't have believed this if it didn't actually happen to me. So, I'm from South Carolina, and we're about 30 to 45 minutes away from the Blue Ridge Mountains. You can see them from any direction here, which is a part of Appalachia. And there's parts of this town that are very, very old, houses that are very, very old, and my great aunt happens to live in one of those houses. It's massive, and it's creaky. Very creaky. So my mom and I decided to spend the night with her one night. That's not an unusual thing. She's the reason we moved up here. So this is the upstairs. So you go upstairs, and this is directly what you look at. And then this is the bedroom we were in, and there's the other layout, and this is my aunt's bedroom. So we have a direct line of sight here, and to this where it connects. So these two bedrooms are connected. This is all connected through doors. You can get through all these through doors. But this bedroom door and this bedroom door and this bathroom door face each other. So we're hanging out just watching TV or a movie, and me and my mom decided we're gonna go to bed, and we're sharing that room like next to the couches right next to us. So I'm dreaming, and I'm having an absolutely horrific dream. I'm dreaming that the police are after me, but I haven't done anything wrong. So I'm terrified, and I'm running, and I'm being chased by this horde of police. And I finally get somewhere, and I slam the door behind me, and the police have the battering ram, and they're just like, bam, bam, bam. And in my dream, like, I can feel I can feel the vibrations in my dream because I'm like trying to hold this door shut, and I can't let them through. And then finally in my dream, they break through, and that's what jolts me awake. And it's one of those jolts that I'm like, and I'm like, okay. And I should not, the door has just come from being swung open, hit the wall, and is now doing that little shh. And I'm like, okay, that had to be weird. You know how like your alarm clock gets incorporated into your dream and it makes like some weird I'm like, the dog probably came through, hit the door, and that's what I heard. It just got like incorporated. So I look over at my mom, who's supposed to be asleep next to me. She's sitting up, wide-eyed, completely terrified. And I'm like, Mom, what's up? She goes, did you hear that? She said someone has been knocking on the door for the past 5 minutes. And they just opened it. Like, as in, it flew open and hit the wall. My mom would literally have no way of knowing what I had been dreaming. So I didn't incorporate anything into my dream. That's what was actually happening while I was asleep. Now we're laying there completely freaked out. And since the door is open, there's no lights on in the little living area. So what happens? On those little end tables next to the couches, there are lamps, heavy lamps with the cord that you pull. So we hear it go click, and the whole place lights up. So we're thinking that my aunt or my uncle had fallen asleep on the couch. They heard the door slam open. They turned on the light to see what was going on. So we wait and we wait. Nothing. No one gets up. We don't hear any footsteps. Just nothing. So we don't know what to make of it. Like, we're literally paralyzed, right? So then, there's a direct line of sight from our room to my aunt's room. So we see her, and we're thinking she heard it and she woke up. We see her, and she's very distinct. She's like 4'5". She has a little Cleopatra black haircut. She's wearing pink scallop pajamas, pink with white lace around the sleeves, button up with pants. And we see her open the bedroom door and then go across from her bedroom to the other one. And she has a disabled son that's in there. So we're thinking she got up to go check on him. She doesn't see us, but we see her, right? She doesn't come out of the room, which she usually does. Doesn't come out. So we're like, okay, maybe she got caught up. We are just going to wait. It's like 5:30 in the morning. They're early birds, so they should be getting up right around now anyway. So as we're laying there, it starts to get more and more intense. The smell of coffee and the smell of bacon. Like, no lie. Like, this was full on breakfast that we start smelling. And so we're like, oh my God, okay, thank God. Like, somebody's awake. Uncle's downstairs cooking. Let's just hurry up. Let's make a beeline for downstairs. And there is a totally plausible explanation for this. So me and my mom get up and we go downstairs. And downstairs is pitch black. But you can still smell it. You can still smell the coffee. It's like somebody just cleaned up. So not even 5 minutes of us turning on a light, realizing like nobody's down there, nothing's been cooked. My uncle and my aunt come downstairs, both of them. And he is pissed. He's pissed. And he's yelling at me. And I'm like, what? He's claiming that I kept him up all night by playing with the doorknob. And he was yelling at me saying, if you needed something, you should have, like, just opened the door. Like, why did you have to play with the doorknob all night long? So we tell him, like, about the dream, about the light, and about seeing my aunt. My aunt's not even wearing the pink pajamas with the scallops and the button-up. She's wearing a white t-shirt and blue pajama bottoms. That was the last time that I spent the night in that house.
Something I get asked literally all the time is, Morgan, you've lived in Appalachia your entire life. Tell me your scariest experience. And I literally can't, because I have had so much happen to me here, and anyone that grew up here is probably in that same boat. But I will tell you a few stories that happened to me when I was growing up. One time I had a friend over at my house, and my parents, myself, and that friend were in the living room, and the living room is kind of connected to the kitchen, but it's cut off by a countertop. So we all watched in horror as a dry plastic cup slid from one side to the other of this dry countertop. right across it, completely level, no explanation for it whatsoever. When I was younger, I loved to watch MTV. I loved Super Sweet 16, Silent Library, all that stuff. But anytime I would try to watch it in my room, my TV volume would either turn completely down or my TV would turn off. And one day I got brave and I decided I was going to turn my TV back on, and I heard stomping coming down my hallway and no one was home. So I turned the TV back off. One time I was home alone again and I was using the bathroom and I heard our front door open and I assumed it was my dad, so I called out to him and he didn't answer. And so I was like, I better get off the toilet because I think someone just broke into my house. So I get up, I walk from the bathroom into the hallway that goes into the living room, and something grabbed the back of my hair and jerked me backwards so hard I fell on the ground and I never made it into the living room. So don't know what was waiting for me in there. One time I had a friend over and she was in my parents' room and she came bustling out of there at top speed because she saw a dark, shadowy figure leap across the bed at her. And I would go on to see this many times. And not my final story, but the final one I'm going to be sharing today actually happened kind of recently. I went back to my childhood home to have dinner with my parents, and when I walked in, the light in their dining room was swinging like crazy. So took note of that. Went on about my business. I had the same cup all evening right with me. I was drinking out of it. I was refilling it. I had seen it empty. Well, I finished my whatever drink, and there were 3 giant screws in the bottom of that cup that I almost swallowed. I know what you're thinking. Your house was haunted. No, babe, that land was haunted. That land was haunted. It wasn't my house. It wasn't the newly added house. It's the land.
I'm sick. And a couple of days ago, I went to see a patient. And I've known this patient for years. But the times I had gone to that house, it was just this patient living in the house. I had never seen anyone else that was there. So I arrived at this patient's house. I'm familiar. She takes me to the sitting room where we always sit. So I'm sitting down. I'm talking to my patient. And before we even get too far into it, I'm noticing from the corner of my eye to the right, like there's someone walking in the room and like turning around and walking out. And so I like turned my head and looked. It's caught my eye. And then I'm like so crazy, like I must have been seeing things. A couple minutes later, I see the same person. It looks like they're wearing jeans and like a white shirt. Walk into the room, turn around and walk out, and I turn again and I look. And I'm like, that was so crazy. Like, I didn't sleep well last night. Is this because I'm tired? Like, I swear, it's like I saw something. So I decide if I see it again, I'm not going to turn my head and look. I'm just going to ignore it. Because that's my go-to. And I'm looking at my patient. We're talking. And I start to see it creep from that half-open door. And it keeps walking and walking. And I'm waiting for it to turn around and walk back. But it doesn't. It keeps moving until it's right in my right periphery. And I had asked her, I said, please excuse me. I said, we've known each other some years now. I said, can I ask you a question that doesn't have to do with what I'm here for? Would you mind? And she said no. And I said, I could be wrong. And I don't want you to think of me as unprofessional, certainly. You know, my job's very important to me, and I'm really glad we're talking about why I'm here. But I said, I keep seeing a gentleman in jeans and a white shirt, like a white t-shirt, big, oversized white t-shirt, like walking in the room and hesitating and walking in the room and hesitating. And the last time I saw him, out of my peripheral vision, walking into the room, it almost looked like he was going to take a seat on the couch, but he looked at the cat on the couch and he was like, and then he turned around and walked away. And I said, you know, this very well could be nothing. And she said, oh my God. And I said, yes. She said, my dad just passed away. I said, you're kidding me. She goes, no, my dad just passed away. She goes, he used to always wear his worn out work jeans, and he'd always have some kind of white shirt on. She said sometimes he'd wear like a hoodie or something over his white shirt, but he was like old school. Like he'd always have his white shirt on. So it wasn't a t-shirt. Got that wrong. I was lost in the detail. I guess it was like a white, you know, like those little short old man like collar shirts on. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Just looked like a t-shirt to me. But I said, it's funny because it seems like he's walking in, but he doesn't want to sit down next to the cat. Like, he keeps walking in halfway and then he goes back and she goes, oh yeah, my cat, we're going to call the cat Philip because I don't want to give the cat's real name because of HIPAA, you know. But she's like, no, yeah, Philip never liked him. She's like, he would have never sat on the couch next to Philip. And I'm like, well, he keeps hesitating. It's like he wants to come and have a seat, but he's not messing with that cat. And the cat keeps looking up as if the cat's seeing something. And obviously there's nothing there. But I can see it. And she's like, it's so crazy that you said that because she said my daughter has visited a couple of times and says that she feels like there's something in the house. And I was like, I'm no specialist on the matter or anything. I said, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. I can't tell you who it is. I can't even tell, I'm like, I'm just asking because I thought it was interesting. I said, so maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it was so interesting because sometimes people will swear up and down to me, like my friends and such will be like, oh yeah, like we have paranormal activity in the house and, I see this or I see that, and I'll walk in and really not notice anything. And what's the rhyme and what's the reason? I don't know. And then sometimes I'll be sitting in a house on a random Wednesday having a very casual conversation with someone in the most professional manner. And all of a sudden it's like bright as day. Like you just see it. So when people are like, can you turn these things on or turn these things off? No, I don't think so. Because if I could turn it on or turn it off, I'd turn it off and leave it off. Because I find it very unsettling and distracting sometimes, in my opinion. So I think it's funny that her father would not sit down next to Philip. He was like, in the afterlife, I'm still not messing with that cat. It's not worth it.
Did you see it? Watch it again if you didn't see it. It's right in the middle when the light turns on. You'll see an arm.
What in the... It was like almost behind that tree. It was tall, lanky, kind of hunched over like a skinwalker, and it looked like it kind of had some weird claws. Now it's gone.
Flash forward a few months, things have been fairly quiet. I have my daughter. We had an issue with a pipe in our house and it caused it to back up and like flood both the kids' bedrooms, the bathroom, it was a nightmare. The whole flooring has to get tore up, and instead of putting carpet back in the bedrooms, we decided let's just do wood throughout the whole house. So that kind of eliminated them getting out of their bed and going to sleep on the floor. And unfortunately, because it ruined their toddler beds, we had to get new ones, and we decided, you know what, they're 4 now, let's get them those cool loft beds so they can sleep up top and then have like stuff to play with underneath, After about a week of being in these loft beds, several times a week they would be out of their beds running to us in the middle of the night to say that there was somebody in their room. I started asking questions, not to like add any fuel to them being scared, but I really kind of just wanted to know what they were seeing. They said somebody would be walking in their room and standing at the like ladder area of the loft bed where you'd go to climb up to get inside. Not only that, but they said there was multiple in the room walking around. It gets worse. They started drawing pictures of what they were seeing, and I'll insert the picture at the end of this. I actually have one saved on my phone that they drew. Would basically draw pictures of like a square, which they said was their bed, and then like all these little people around it, and they said that they were the ghosts. Naturally, I took matters into my own hands and did the only thing that I knew to do at the time, and when they would be at school and my daughter would be napping, I'd be hollering in this house saying, get the heck out of here, you're scaring my children. And after a while, it started to die down, and we didn't have that issue for quite some time.
Slightly creepy Appalachian story that I forgot to tell you guys. So after my husband and I got married, we went straight to our honeymoon spot, which was this really nice cabin in the woods, in the Appalachian woods. And it was nighttime at this point, so we had to drive up this long driveway through the woods at night to get to the tree house that was our that where we were staying for our honeymoon. And as we were driving up, we felt the car kind of like go over something, and we knew that like we were supposed to be really careful in the driveway, and we were, but still we were worried about like having messed the driveway up because it was part of a national park. So my husband's like, hey, we should get out and walk back down the driveway at night in the Appalachian woods to look at the ground and make sure that we didn't screw up the driveway. Everything in me was telling me to just stay in the car, but I didn't want him to go by himself. And like, he can handle himself, but like at the same time, he doesn't believe in spiritual shit. I wasn't about to go let him start whistling or something. So I go with him, and we are walking. He had a flashlight, so it wasn't pitch black, but we were walking around on this dark trail in the Appalachian Mountains. And I started hearing footsteps all around us. It was most likely animals, but I was freaked out. I felt like we were being watched. We probably were. There were probably deer or something. But like I didn't know that, and I was trying so hard not to really look around, because you don't want to look around too much when you're in the Appalachian woods, because if you see something and it knows you see it, you're in trouble. So I was just going by the if you see it, no you didn't, if you hear it, no you didn't rule, and I was just like pretending I was totally not scared at all. And we go back to the treehouse. Everything was fine. We didn't screw up the driveway. My cat is meowing. So we climb up the steps, and at that point I'm like actually getting really scared, and I'm like, oh my God, like, because I still heard footsteps that sounded like they were following us. And I was like, I'm scared. And like, we were right by the door, and he was taking forever to get the key and the thing. And I was like, oh my God, this feels like something straight out of a horror movie. And it was fine. Obviously, nothing bad happened. We had a very nice honeymoon. It was all great. But as soon as we walked in the door, I looked above the door frame, and I saw the horseshoe for protection against evil entities, which is like an Appalachian thing. So to walk in after being so creeped out in the Appalachian wilderness and being worried that there were potential spirits or entities watching us, and then walking in and being like, oh, somebody put that there, maybe for a reason. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad to be inside.
So I keep seeing these TikToks about Appalachian folklore, and I want to share a story that happened to me growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. And yes, it's pronounced Appalachian Mountains, not Appalachian Mountains. But basically, my mom told me growing up I had really bad asthma, and it was so bad. She was always taking me to the hospital because she was scared I couldn't breathe. I would start coughing so much that I would throw up. I had to do the nebulizer treatments like all the time, and I do remember specifically doing those. And at one point, the doctors even thought I had lung cancer. Like, it was really bad. That's kind of how extreme it was. And so at this point, my mom's kind of fed up. She doesn't know what's wrong with me. My doctors don't know what's wrong with me. So she's talking with my great grandma on my dad's side. I do want to mention that my dad's side of the family has lived in the Appalachian Mountains for generations. Like, I have done DNA tests, and basically they have lived there since the settlers came to America. Like, that is how long they've been there. But anyways, my mom is talking to my great grandma, and she's just letting her know that she's really exhausted. She doesn't know what to do. She's tried all of her options, and she's scared. And my great grandma tells my mom, you need to take her out to the tree behind my house, and a back in the family has to mark her height in the tree, cut a piece of her hair off, and then put it in the tree. And she told my mom, once I outgrew this mark, my asthma would be cured. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as I outgrew the mark, my asthma was gone. I had no more issues with my asthma. Like, I no longer needed the nebulizer. It was just gone. And to be honest, I don't even remember any of this happening. My mom actually told me about this a couple years ago. I do remember having really bad asthma as a kid and having the nebulizer, but that's it. And when my mom was telling me the story, she let me know, she was like, you know, I'm not that much of a believer, but I have no explanation for this. So yeah, that is my personal story about growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. What do you guys think? Is my grandma a witch?
There are certain mountains in the U.S. I just will never go into. It starts with an A. So this little boy goes to visit his grandma in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm probably saying that wrong. I always do. But he's visiting his grandma like he does all the time. And when he goes to his grandma's, this time in particular, she seems really like out of it. And she's constantly looking out the window, peeking through like her blinds. And she's called this little boy's mom, which would be her daughter. And she keeps saying things like, they're coming, they're looking for me. And this little boy, like, whatever, like his grandma's doing her own thing. So this little boy is staying there for a few days and he's trying to help his grandma out and he wants to help her take the trash out. And he's like, I'm going to take the trash out, grandma. And she's like, wait, let me do it. So he's like, all right. So he's just kind of like observing on the back porch area and she walks the trash to the trash can like you normally would. And all of a sudden she stops and she's like, he found me. And she looks over and there's like this tall, it's not a dog. It's this very, very, very big dog-like creature, but it's just staring at her. And then it stands up on the back two legs and just looks at her. And its eyes aren't like normal animal eyes. They're like really, really yellow eyes, almost like they're just staring right into her. So it seems like forever, this little boy is like watching his grandma on the backside of the house, try and put trash away, but this like thing is there. Like, it's like half dog, half like human, not sure what it is. And he's like, doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden his grandma like breaks a trance of some sort. It's like she was like hypnotized by this thing and starts running towards him. She's like, get in the house. So of course he runs in the house. They lock the door, everything up, and she runs to the window and she's like trying to see if this thing is still out there. And by the time that she gets into the house, this thing is gone. So she calls her daughter and she's like telling him like, he found me. He knows where I'm at. They know where I'm at. And this little boy is just like, what in the world is going on at grandma's house? Luckily the mom showed up, took the little boy. They were both okay. Then the grandma moved shortly after that and she's kind of just bounced around and she continues to have this paranoia and she's always looking out saying they're watching me, they're coming for me over and over. Sadly, this little boy hasn't talked to his grandma in a long time because his dad says your grandma's crazy and we're not going to do all that. But what do you guys think that grandma came across? Because I don't know, skinwalker, shapeshifter, the list goes on and on, especially in those mountains.
My family and I were followed by a trucker and there was this brand new Love's gas station. So my husband said, let me pull in here. It looks good. It looks clean. I can pump some gas and we can keep going. I went in there. The restrooms were clean. Everything was fine. I went back to the car. My husband had already pumped gas. Then he was going to go get a bottled water and go to the restroom himself. Now, this is a trucker gas station, so this is a safe space for truckers to pull in, go to sleep, rest for a few hours. And so we pulled out of the gas station, and not even 1 mile after leaving this gas station, there was a 18-wheeler, and it started flashing its lights at us. Now, there are 2 lanes here. There is a slow lane and a fast lane. My husband was still going 70, but he said he was going to scoot over and go to the slow lane. That way, if someone wanted to go faster, they can just pass him up. So we were on the slow lane going 70, and this 18-wheeler comes right behind us and flashes its lights. We didn't think anything of it immediately because we were like, okay, what if he made a mistake? What if he's flashing his lights at oncoming traffic? And we just ignored it. A little bit later, again. And my husband tells me, did this guy just flash his lights at me again? And I was like, I think so. I don't know what's going on. So this 18-wheeler comes up right next to us and he's flashing his lights like 5 times in a row. And I'm freaking out. Like, okay, we didn't take the kids down. Did one of them get out of the car without us? Like, I didn't know what to think. So I'm looking back. Our kids are safe. They're asleep in the back seat. Then this 18-wheeler comes behind us, flashing his lights, just going. He's trying to like pretty much get us to pull over. And my husband is like, absolutely not. So we're from Texas. We carry. He grabs it and he's like, okay, I need to be ready for who knows what, because I don't know what this guy wants. We weren't messing with nobody. We were just minding our own business. Then my husband floors it. He gets away, he's flooring it, and there's another SUV that is behind us now, driving very fast, and we felt like it was another vehicle that was following us. Thankfully, my husband sped up. He was going in and out. Like, we were just ready to get out of whoever's way. We finally reached the next town. He pulled in to a very lit car wash, and he's like, okay, I need to check the car, make sure we were okay. There is nothing wrong with our car. We drive a newer car, and it would have told us if something was wrong. There was nothing wrong. Now, there's a lot of rumors and conspiracies about trucker gas stations, especially the Love's gas station, about abductions and sex. And my husband was like, I don't want to scare you, but there's conspiracies about the Love's gas station that somehow the truckers kind of do this on purpose, get you to pull over to grab whoever it is that they want for sex. We don't know what this person wanted, what possibly these people wanted. I'm just so glad that we got away and we made it home safe. It was just so scary because we had our kids, you know what I mean? But anyway, stay safe out there. If you guys have any stories, spooky stories, scary stories about anything like this, road rage, anything like this, please send them to my email or DM because I am interested in this topic now. We have another trucker story on our hands. A few weeks ago, I posted something terrifying that happened to me and my family. We were actually followed by a trucker, and I received another trucker story. She said that this happened a week after Christmas. Her and her two boys were driving in Pennsylvania on the highway. It was dark, it was snowy, the roads were bad but not terrible. The traffic wasn't bad, people were driving slower than usual because of the snow, and one of the boys needs to go to the restroom. So now she's panicking. She's like, okay, we need to go to the restroom so we don't have an accident. And she is trying to speed up a little bit to try to get to the gas station so that one of her boys can use the restroom. She said that she was originally on the right lane, which is the slow lane. She decides to move over, speeds up just a little bit, enough to pass that truck, goes, and as she's speeding up, that truck starts flashing its lights at her and starts honking and starts acting crazy. And she's looking at the mirror like, okay, I didn't do anything bad, so what's going on? She said that she started thinking to make sure that she did not cut him off, and she didn't. She was driving very careful. And this truck just kept on doing this on and off, just flashing its lights at her, honking, just acting crazy. She's freaking out because one, she's a woman alone with her two boys, and whoever is in this truck is just mad, upset. And then she started getting in her head like, okay, am I doing something wrong? Is something wrong with my car? And she had a feeling that this trucker wanted her to pull over. Eventually, the traffic started to slow down even more because of the weather. She's just trying to get home at this point, and she does. She talks to her husband about the situation, and he's like, whatever you do, if this situation ever happens again, one, don't fight with the trucker, and two, if you feel like whoever this is wants you to pull over, don't. She said that she felt validated and that she wasn't going crazy, especially hearing my story, because she was like, okay, so this is something that happens.
The mountains of Appalachia my whole life, and I have some stories. This story actually took place when I was in about third grade. Every year we would go on a field trip to the Biltmore house, or the Biltmore mansion, which is just about 45 minutes from where I live. It's over the mountain in western North Carolina, in Appalachia. And this is it's pretty much within the city limits of Asheville, I think. It may be right outside, but I think it's actually in the Asheville city limits. This house is absolutely massive. It's ridiculously gaudy, okay? And it's beautiful, but it's gaudy, okay? And it has a really, really strange energy about it. Even when I was a kid, it had a really strange energy. So third grade, we go up here on this field trip, and my mom went. She was the classroom parent at the time. So she gets to go to Biltmore with us. And so I'm standing there. The tour guide is talking about the rooms we were getting ready to go into, and we were getting ready to enter into the pool area. Okay. He was explaining it. Now the pool area has ropes where you would normally see like ladders in a pool today. They had ropes tied to the side, and these ropes made me really uneasy as a kid. But, the pool was lit. It had lights and everything for that time period, which supposedly it was built by the Vanderbilts in the 1800s, and I no longer believe that. I believe they found it founded. I don't believe they built it. But anyway, so we're standing here, the tour guide's going over everything, and we hear a very loud spring of a diving board, and then we hear splash. We hear kids laughing. My mom said, "Oh, that's neat, Auntie." She said, "There's somebody swimming in the pool this time." So a couple of minutes after, we wrap up and we get to free roam, after the tour guide finished telling us about these rooms, and we go walking into the pool, and there's no water in the pool. There was nobody there. The hair on my arms, the hair on my neck stood up. My mom she's very pragmatic, and she had this look on her face that was like, and I said, maybe there's a tape player. Maybe there's somebody playing a prank. It was bizarre. Well, after this experience, I started kind of looking into it. I wanted to find out more about this. I started to awaken to energy and stuff like that. I wanted to look more into the Biltmore mansion. And I started reading. I was just watching regular videos about it, not even like, scary ones or anything, but it was like a lot of people in the comment section would talk about the pool area and how bad it felt. But about 2 years ago, I saw a video on here, a series. It's by a girl who's interviewing a woman who is former elite. She was explaining, she's trying to clear her conscience, okay? She left she's now since found God or whatever, and she's trying to clear her conscience. So she was telling this girl about all the things that she'd been involved in. She explained that she'd gone to a party at Gloria Vanderbilt's mansion with Anderson Cooper's mom. So she was talking about when she went up to the house. She said that they were going to initiate a very well-known, a child of a very well-known, prominent banking family. And this child was going to be part of was going to take place of another child. So, but she said that these children were tied up around the pool. They used the ropes to tie the children to the pool so they wouldn't run away or whatever. And as soon as I heard that story, all of those weird feelings I had as a kid started to make sense. And I just knew that's what I was sensing when I was there. That was that odd feeling about that place. And I had I thought recently I'd like to go back, and I was like, I don't really know that I would be comfortable going back at this point. Knowing what I believe now, I can feel it on an energetic level. There's been a lot of trauma in that building, and it's been inflicted intentionally. And I'm not going to say by who or whatever, but I can just feel it. It makes sense now. But the thing is that I remembered also another room in that house that gave me the heebie-jeebies, and it was down, I don't remember where it was in relation to the pool, but I want to say it wasn't real far from there. I think it was down in the basement. I think they called it the party room, or maybe the Halloween room or something like that, the holiday room. And it was like, I think it's tunnel access. That's where the tunnels that go from underneath this house, they lead to this. This is where they come to, I think. And the kids get off there, and there were paintings on the wall, and it was kind of like a basement room almost, but it had little like kids paintings around it. It was a really, really bizarre room in this whole mansion. It didn't make sense. It doesn't fit in. But I don't know. I've thought about that house a lot and about that situation, and I really feel like something bad's gone down there. A lot of bad things.
What happened to Charles on Blood Mountain? This happened on Blood Mountain in Georgia, and it's one of the most baffling hiker disappearances of the year. On November the 11th, 2025, 67-year-old Charles, a Texas lawyer and a law professor, set out on what was supposed to be a familiar hike near Blood Mountain, Georgia, a place he'd climbed many times before along the Appalachian Trail. He left from the Brian Reese Trailhead, a short but steep route he knew extremely well, and reached the summit of the Blood Mountain that afternoon, where a fellow hiker actually spoke with him around 1:30 p.m., but after that, he vanished. No calls, no messages, nothing. What followed was huge. Dozens of search and rescue teams were brought in. Canines came in, drones scanned the forest, helicopters flew overhead, volunteers, photos, sightings, everything the crew had. Despite almost 2 weeks of intense search, no trace was found. No gear, no camp, no clue where he went off trail. Official former search operations were suspended, but the family didn't give up. They organized a major private search effort, even continuing into the winter, hoping to find him before harsh weather set in. His loved ones described Charles as a planner, a Eagle Scout, and a seasoned hiker who always checked in with his family, which makes his disappearance all the more mysterious. Here's the real mystery. He chose a route he knew well, yet somehow, somewhere on the descent, he vanished without a single trace. The family and search team still hold on to hope, but no clues have been found. Whether through trail cameras, hikers, memories, or something hidden deep in the woods.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and while there are a lot of crazy things in the woods, there's also some crazy things in the water. I know that because I have seen it firsthand. I have a firsthand account of a giant catfish. I was fishing at Watts Bar Dam. I was really young. It was sometime in the winter because I remember my dad had like one of them little propane lanterns there. This was before cell phones or like regular LED flashlights, so we had a propane lantern, and I was in a wetsuit that was way too big for me, and we were fishing on the bank very close, and it's all rocks right by the water, and there was like a sidewalk, so we were on the sidewalk. I think I was laying on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden we heard this ruckus in the water, and we looked down. My dad's fishing. I'm not fishing, obviously. I'm very young. And I look down, and there is this catfish swimming in the water, y'all. This thing, to me, at that age, looked bigger than a school bus. In reality, it had to have been bigger than a car. I don't think it was as big as a school bus, but bigger than a car. That's a catfish that probably weighs 2,000, 3,000 pounds. Y'all, at these dams in Tennessee, they have these huge, they're called turbines, however y'all want to say it. It's these massive fans that spin like a propeller on a cruise ship. They have those. I don't know what the purpose is, but they're at the bottom of the dam, and it just cuts up all this food, and these massive fish just lay at the bottom of the dam, and they gobble up all this food because there's no predators for them. I don't think there's any lifespan, and they just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow because catfish are bottom feeders. So if you're there on the bottom with an endless buffet, of course you're going to get very large, and you're going to grow to the size of a school bus in a kid's mind. And in reality, it was definitely the size of a car, maybe an SUV. It was massive. And I remember also one other time when we were fishing on the boat with my dad, he caught a catfish, and it was, pulling the boat around in the water. Massive catfish in this river. It was pulling the boat, and then right before the line snapped, its tail came out of the water, and it looked like a whale tail. It was absolutely massive. So if you have ever thought about getting in the water in the Appalachian Mountains and any of those deep rivers, just don't do it. Don't do it. There are massive fish in there that can literally swallow you whole.
I got a really good cryptid story right out of the Appalachian Mountains. So this guy says that even though the Appalachian Mountains have a lot of really weird things going on there, it's still his home. His family has been there for generations, and everybody has their fair share of encounters and stories. So one night when he was about 13 years old, his mini poodle mix Lola woke him up because she needed to use the bathroom. He really didn't want to get out of bed. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, but of course he had to. So when he gets outside, he said he noticed that it was incredibly foggy out, like way foggier than it would be normally around that time of year. And he said he also noticed that it was freezing cold, so much so that he was surprised that it would be able to be as foggy as it was for how cold that it was. He said he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. So Lola runs out to do her business, and he's flipping through his phone when all of a sudden he got this really overwhelming feeling that someone or something was right behind him. He said every hair on the back of his neck stood up. He slowly turned around, and what he saw was absolutely terrifying. He said about 5 feet in front of him was a huge pitch black dog-like creature with a long cat-like tail that curled at the end. Its body was so long that it was half the length of the Jeep Cherokee it was standing nearby. Its head looked to be too small for its body, and he said its eyes were pure white. And then he said its legs were the worst part. They were impossibly long and bent in ways that any living creature should not be able to walk on. He said it was crouched down, belly to the ground, looking like it was in a position to pounce, kind of like a panther would be. He did the only thing his body would allow him to do, and he let out the loudest scream he has ever screamed He said it looked up at him with those ungodly white eyes, and it kind of rose up on all fours, and now its ears were about chest height to him. It looked at him, looked over at the dog, looked back up at him, and then turned around and walked away, thank God. When it walked away, it walked with such a smooth stride that he didn't understand how it was possible because of how bent out of shape its legs looked. And then he described the smell. He said there was such a heavy scent in the air of like a skunk, and he said it wasn't just how strong the smell was. It was so thick it almost had weight to it. The dog didn't even seem like it fazed it, and then his mom peeked her head out the door and asked if everything was okay because she said she heard screaming, and he just scooped up the dog and ran inside the house. He told her what happened, and they locked up all the doors and windows, and he will never forget that sight. He mentions he has a lot of experience with hunting and being outdoors all the time from living in that area, and he has never even come close to seeing anything like that.
From a haunted house in Appalachia. I have been having a flare-up, guys. I just had to rest for a few days. Sorry about the wait. I've also been trying to post this very video for days now, and it got to the point where I just had to make a new one. So I'm making the new one now. I wanted to let you guys know about some information that someone reached out to me and let me know. I'm not going to say their name. If they want to let themselves be known in the comments, more than welcome. He reached out and told me that he felt some energy in the house that was going on. And from what he can read, there is someone named Malachi that worked in a coal mine possibly, or there was a factory that sat behind my house. I reached out to my neighbor and asked her if that was a coal factory, and she said it used to be a clothing factory that they could have possibly heated with coal. So he told me that he felt a young gentleman named Malachi that worked in some type of coal area that was killed. It could have been an accident, and they tried to cover it up. I don't know if that would have been possibly for insurance reasons at the time, or maybe they wanted it to look like an accident. I'm not sure. But earlier that morning, before I read that message, something told me to go in the basement. And I went in the basement, as creepy as it is. I am wondering, in my basement, when I went down there, I'm wondering because there's a part where it's kind of sectioned off, and there's a set of steps that lead nowhere that are old. The new set of steps go upstairs into my house. So there's a door where I can enter into the basement from my apartment. But the steps that aren't being used on the other side go nowhere. They just go into a wall. Now, my porch, when I look at it, it's the original porch to the house, so I don't think that it would have went up underneath a porch that you can't stand up in. I'm wondering if there's a portion of that basement that is sectioned off for a reason. Now, there are homes behind my house that are very small townhomes, and I'm almost positive they were the houses that they used to provide living for the workers, because it's right across the street, and they're old. They're not as old as my house, but they're old. So I'm wondering if there's something funky going on over here in between these houses. I have a feeling.
There are weird things that happen in the Appalachian Mountains at night. Now, this story comes out of North Carolina. There was this young man named Chris. Now, Chris said he grew up in North Carolina, and he said him and his friends one summer decided they were going to go camping. Well, they found this nice little spot up in the mountains, and he said, it was about like a 3-mile hike. They get to their campsite, and they set up their tents and everything, and the first night, they have a really good time. The next morning, when they wake up, they said they got out of their tents, and they were surprised at these 2 coyotes standing outside of their campsite, and they were just staring at them. And they thought it was really weird because it was daytime. Well, he said eventually the coyotes, just wandered off. Well, that night, they said they were in their tents, they were sleeping, when they heard a woman screaming. And it was like very distinct. And they're all freaking out, like, what do we do? What do we do? And eventually it stopped. they go back to sleep. And the next morning, they get up and they're talking amongst themselves like, maybe we should like check out the woods and like see if someone needs help. So they set off into the woods. And that's when they stumbled upon this campsite. And they said, there's this real nice tent. There was a cooler and it still had food in it. There was some diapers and some clothes inside the tent. There was, just all this stuff around the campsite, like whoever was there left in a hurry. Well, Chris said next to the campsite, he sees this tree. And carved into this tree is a heart. And he said there was a woman, a man, and what looked like a young child's name carved into this tree. And he thought, that's like really odd. So they leave the campsite and they go back to their campsite. They go to bed that night and they are awoken to the sound of a child crying. And they're like, where is this coming from? What is making this sound? So they unzip their tent. And when they go outside of the tent, they discover this very young child who is there crying. So they pick up the kid and they comfort him and eventually get him to fall asleep. They put him inside the tent and they zip it up. They then call the sheriff's office and are like, hey, we found this kid wandering around the woods at night. We don't know what to do. So after about an hour or so, the sheriff pulls up and he looks like he's very mad. And he starts yelling at these kids, like, what are you guys trying to pull? What is your play here? What's going on? And they're like, what are you talking about? We found this kid. And he's like, what kid? They take the sheriff over to the tent. And when they unzip it, they are surprised to find the tent is completely empty. There is no child in there, which is weird because they're watching this tent the whole time. There's no way this kid could have gotten out. So the sheriff's like, I don't know what kind of game you guys are playing, but you need to leave because it's eerie to me that you knew about the woman and the man and their kid that disappeared here. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, 10 years ago, there was a woman and a man and their young kid, and they went missing at their campsite. Not a lot of people knew about this, so I have no idea how you guys found out, but it's pretty messed up that you would try and play a prank like this. And they insisted with the sheriff, we're not lying, this really happened. And the sheriff never did believe them. And he said he would never go back into those woods again.
I was thinking recently about how I've always loved telling ghost stories and hearing ghost stories. And I had this memory of probably maybe second or third grade. Me and this group of girls would sit at recess, and there was this little area at the far end of the playground that was kind of a ditch, and there was a sewer grate in the center. And we would all sit around that sewer grate as if it was a campfire, and we would tell ghost stories. And I remember in particular this little girl named Loretta. And she wasn't someone I knew well. She wasn't somebody I was close friends with. But I remember her so distinctly because of this story, and also because she had an older brother who was killed in a four-wheeler accident a couple of years before I knew her. And I remember that day Loretta telling us that sometimes in the mornings she would hear her brother, even though he had passed. She would hear him walking down the stairs, and he had this really distinctive way of dragging his hand along the banister and touching each spindle as he passed it. And she said some mornings she would hear his hand dragging down the stairs. And she said also that her mother had told her that some nights she would wake up and feel him shaking her foot, the same as he did in life. If he had had a bad dream, or if he just woke up in the middle of the night, sometimes he would go into his mother's room and shake her foot. And I think what I remember the most about Loretta telling us this story was how, one, she wasn't afraid of the ghost at all. She was so matter of fact about how this was her brother.
She knew him. She remembered him. He was a gentle spirit now, and he was familiar. And also how matter of fact she was about not caring if we believed her or not. She was just telling her story. She was just sharing her story with other little third grade girls. Anyway, I love thinking about that. And I love thinking about how she wasn't scared. Because at the time I was very much afraid of spirits. And I feel like Loretta gave me a little bit of courage.
If you made it this far, thank you for exploring the paranormal side of Appalachia with me. These mountains host centuries of secrets, and we're only scratching the surface. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive. And as always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.